A story comes along that reminds us how deeply one person can touch the world just by being themselves. It is a reminder that even in the quietest moments, a vibrant spirit can leave an echo that lasts a lifetime. Today, we gather our thoughts to honor the memory of Lauren Bennett, a woman whose grounded presence and unforgettable voice became the soundtrack to an entire generation. Those who worked alongside her often remember the steady warmth she brought into every room. Her former bandmates in GRL shared a message that truly captures the depth of this loss. They said, "We will forever cherish the love, laughter, and countless memories she gave us. Her beautiful spirit touched so many lives." It is a poignant reflection on a life that was taken far too soon. Lauren passed away at the age of 37, leaving behind a community of fans and friends who saw her not just as a star, but as a radiant soul who navigated the highs and lows of the industry with a rare kind of grace. At a private memorial service in London recently, those closest to her wrote heartfelt messages on balloons, releasing them into the sky as a final soaring tribute to a woman who was forever loved. Behind the cameras and the bright lights was a real person, a girl from the outskirts of London who, believe it or not, once struggled with being quite shy. Growing up in Meofam, Kent, Lauren was a born performer, but she admitted that standing on a stage at a young age felt like a battle. She would often just stand there, feeling a bit awkward. But she found her strength. Inspired by the confidence of artists like Gwen Stefani and Beyoncé, she stepped out of her shell. From her early days with the Paradiso Girls to her historic collaboration on LMFAO's party rock anthem, Lauren's journey was one of vibrant determination. You might remember that song. It didn't just top the charts, it became a global cultural phenomenon. Yet even as her voice reached millions, Lauren remained the funny GRL, the one who used her silly side to make her teammates laugh during those long, exhausting rehearsals. You know, sometimes a story comes up that reminds us that love and vulnerability are the greatest strengths we possess. Lauren wasn't just a singer, she was a brave advocate for mental health. In her final public words on social media, she spoke directly to her followers with a sobering message, urging them to advocate for themselves and never ignore when something feels wrong. It was a final act of radical kindness from a woman who had seen the weight of mental health struggles within her own family and through the tragic loss of her dear friend and bandmate Simone Battle. She turned her own pain into a message of hope, releasing the song Hurricane to show the world what it feels like to lose someone and what it feels like to struggle. She used her platform to ensure her fans felt safe and informed, a reminder that love can help us get through even the hardest battles. Lauren leaves behind a legacy of unforgettable talent and deep empathy, but perhaps her most precious legacy is her 6-year-old daughter Harlow, a living reminder of the love Lauren shared with her partner Kenny Wormald. As we reflect on her life today, let us take a moment to appreciate those around us right now. Life is a delicate thing, and Lauren's story is a beautiful, if heartbreaking, call to hold our loved ones a little closer. Her voice will continue to dance through our speakers, and her silly, warm spirit will live on in every memory she created. She was a pop powerhouse, yes, but more importantly, she was a mother, a friend, and a light that refused to be dimmed. Her legacy continues to live on in every note. Tributes to Lauren Bennett. Today we gather to celebrate a woman of vibrant energy and unforgettable courage, Doreen C. Broadnax, whom the world knew and loved as Sparky D. On July 4th, 2026, at the age of 61, this pioneering voice of Brooklyn fell silent. Those who worked alongside her often remembered her as a force of nature. Legendary producer DJ Premier reflected on her impact, calling her a relentless voice and an instant force to be reckoned with. Sparky didn't just join the world of hip-hop, she kicked the door down. Growing up on the 14th floor of the Van Dyke Projects in Brownsville, she found her voice in the early 80s with a group called the Playgirls. But it was on New Year's Day 1985 that history was made. Hearing Roxanne Shante on the radio, Sparky and her partner, Spider D, knew they had to answer. Within 24 hours, they mixed and mastered Sparky's Turn, a record that would sell over 300,000 copies and ignite the legendary Roxanne Wars. She proved, once and for all, that a woman's place was at the center of the stage and the heart of the battle. Behind the cameras was a real person with a heart as big as her talent. She leaves behind a legacy of unmatched bravery. Sparky D's journey wasn't just about gold records and sold-out arenas. We're not going to dwell on the painful details, but Doreen was incredibly candid about her darkest chapters, her battles with addiction and the shadow of domestic violence. Her daughter once recalled the simple human moments, the complex reality of a mother trying to find her way. There's a poignant story Sparky often shared about her own mother. Her mom had two simple wishes, a new living room set and a vacation. Sparky was able to provide them, but she always carried the quiet weight of the things left unsaid and the moments missed during her years of struggle. It reminds us all to appreciate those around us right now, to say the I love yous while we can. Sparky eventually found the strength to walk away from that dark place, moving to Atlanta in 2004 to begin what she called her restructure, rebuild, and restore phase. She didn't just survive, she flourished. She chose to use her trauma as a bridge, a way to tell other women that it's going to be okay. Her grounded presence became a source of steady warmth for everyone she touched. In her later years, Sparky D reinvented herself as Apostle Sparky. She traded the battle rap stage for the pulpit, becoming an ordained minister and a pioneer of gospel hip-hop. She founded Treasure Ministries, and in 2007, she was honored with the Gospel Choice Award for her faith-based music. Those who sought her guidance often remember her as a woman of profound grace. She was a regular presence on social media, hosting 12 o'clock prayer sessions to lift others up. She wasn't interested in the spotlight anymore. She was interested in the light. Her final projects, including a fragrance line called Hallelujah and a series of devotionals, were all designed to remind people that God's got your back like a jacket. Sparky D's life is a vibrant reminder that our past does not have to dictate our future. She showed us that even after the hardest battles, we can find peace. Even after the loudest storms, we can find a song of praise. Her legacy continues to live on in every frame of her documentary and every soul she helped heal. Tributes to Sparky D. Victor Willis, 1951-2026. You know, every so often a story comes along that stops us right in the middle of our day. Not because it is shocking, but because it reminds us how much joy one voice can bring into millions of homes. This week, the world said goodbye to Victor Willis, the man behind the badge, the lead singer of the Village People, the voice that made an entire generation get up and dance. He passed away on June 30th, 2026, at the age of 74 after a short but aggressive illness. Today, we celebrate a life that gave us YMCA in the Navy and Macho Man. Let's remember him the way he deserves to be remembered. Those who followed his career often remembered him simply as the policeman, the steady, commanding presence at the front of the stage. In that crisp uniform, that unmistakable mustache, that booming voice. But behind the costume was a real person, a preacher's son from Texas raised on gospel music in his father's church in the Haight-Ashbury district of San Francisco. Long before the disco lights, Victor Willis was simply a boy who loved to sing, and that grounded presence, that steady warmth, never left him even at the height of fame. In 1977, producer Jacques Morali heard something special in Willis's voice. He told him, "I had a dream you sang lead on my album, and it went very, very big." That dream became reality. Willis agreed to lend his vibrant, unforgettable voice to a concept that didn't even have a group yet. That concept became the Village People. And soon songs like YMCA weren't just hits, they became part of the fabric of American culture. Willis co-wrote nearly all of the group's biggest singles. His voice carried them into stadiums, into weddings, into ballparks, into our lives. Here's something many casual fans may not know. Before the Village People, Victor Willis trained as an actor and dancer. He performed with the respected Negro Ensemble Company in New York. He even appeared in the original Broadway production of The Wiz in 1976. A preacher's son, a gospel singer, a Broadway performer, and finally, a disco icon. It's a reminder that talent rarely stays in one lane. It simply finds its way to the stage wherever that stage may be. YMCA could have faded with the disco era. Most songs from that time did, but it didn't. Decades later, it found new life on stages at ball games, at family parties, and yes, at political rallies too. President Trump, in a statement following Willis's passing, called him a great and happy guy, and said the song had become a hit all over again 30 years after its original release. Willis himself once reflected with a touch of humor that watching new generations discover the song was something he felt thankful and impressed by. That's the kind of legacy few artists ever get to witness in their own lifetime. His wife Karen Willis shared the news with the world in a heartfelt statement, writing simply that he had passed as a result of a short but aggressive illness. She asked only for privacy, for space to grieve as a family, and we should honor that. Because behind every stage name, every costume, every hit record, there is always a family. People who loved him not for the fame, but simply for who he was at home. Victor Willis leaves behind a legacy of joy. A legacy of songs that have brought strangers together on dance floors for nearly 50 years. A legacy of proving that music doesn't need to be complicated to be meaningful. Sometimes it just needs to make people smile. His legacy continues to live on. In every wedding reception, every ballpark chant, every time someone raises their arms to spell out 4 simple letters. You know, stories like this always remind us of something important. Life moves fast, and the people who bring us joy, our family, our old friends, the ones who make us smile without even trying, they won't be here forever. So maybe today that's the real gift Victor Willis leaves us, a reminder to call the people we love, to dance a little more, to appreciate the voices around us while we still can. Rest well, Victor. Thank you for the music. Thank you for the joy. Tributes to Victor Willis. Harold Wheeler, 1943 to 2026. Harold Wheeler was more than just a name in the playbill. He was the heartbeat of the American musical. Those who worked alongside him often remembered his grounded presence and the way he could transform a simple rehearsal into something vibrant and truly unforgettable. On June 24th, at the age of 82, that heartbeat transitioned into a lasting echo. Behind the cameras and the conductor's baton was a man who didn't just write notes, he wrote the soundtrack to our memories. To understand the man, we have to look back to a young boy in St. Louis, Missouri, sitting at a piano in the Antioch Baptist Church at just 5 years old. It was there, amidst the hymns and the steady warmth of his community, that Harold began to find his voice. His journey eventually led him to Howard University, where a chance meeting with a student named Hattie Winston changed everything. You see, Harold was actually her substitute music teacher. That meeting blossomed into a beautiful lifelong partnership, a reminder that sometimes the greatest harmonies aren't found on a page, but in the people we love. In the 1960s, Harold stepped into history, becoming the first African-American musical director for a major pop artist when he joined Burt Bacharach. It was a time of great change, and Harold navigated it with a respectful and formal grace that opened doors for generations to come. His touch was everywhere. He shaped the soulful, iconic sounds of The Wiz and the soaring emotions of Dreamgirls. When you hear the opening notes of a Broadway classic, there is a good chance you are hearing Harold's soul, translated through an orchestra. For many of us, Harold was a guest in our homes every week, leading the orchestra for 17 seasons of Dancing with the Stars. He brought a vibrant energy to our living rooms, proving that whether it was a grand Broadway stage or a television studio, his commitment to excellence never wavered. But he was also there in the quiet moments. Did you know he played the piano on Bruce Springsteen's early hits like Blinded by the Light, or that he composed the music for over 1,200 episodes of All My Children? He was a constant, grounded presence in the American cultural landscape, a man who worked not for the accolades, but for the pure love of the craft. In 2019, when he received his special Tony Award for Lifetime Achievement, Harold was almost silent with shock. He later said he didn't do any of it for the awards. He did it because he loved it. That humility, that genuine passion, is what made his work feel so unforgettable to those of us in the audience. His passing after a lengthy illness is a loss felt deeply across the world of art, but his music ensures he is never truly gone. It is a reminder that while the curtain must eventually fall, the song continues in every heart he touched. Harold Wheeler leaves behind his beloved Hattie, their daughters, and a world that sounds a little more beautiful because he was in it. His legacy continues to live on in every frame and every note. Tributes to Harold Wheeler. David Clayton Thomas, 1941 to 2026. You know, every so often a story comes along that reminds us that where you start doesn't have to be where you finish. On the evening of Wednesday, June 24th, 2026, the world lost a truly grounded presence and a powerhouse of soul, David Clayton Thomas. He passed away peacefully at the age of 84 at St. Michael's Hospital in Toronto, leaving behind a vibrant musical history that bridged the gap between the grit of the streets and the glamour of the Grammys. Those who worked alongside him often remember his unforgettable energy, and the legendary Clive Davis once described him, quite simply, as a staggering musician. Behind that husky, high-strung tenor was a man who lived a life of remarkable redemption, a man who transformed a difficult past into a symphony of jazz, rock, and blues. Behind the cameras and the gold records was a real person who knew what it meant to struggle. Born David Henry Tomset in England, his early years in Toronto were marked by hardship and a fractured relationship with his father. By the age of 14, he was living on the streets, eventually spending much of his youth in and out of jails and reformatories. It was in that stark environment, where most would see only despair, that David found his salvation. A turning point came when he picked up an old guitar left behind by a fellow inmate. He taught himself to play, and for the first time found acceptance in jailhouse concerts. You know, sometimes a story comes up that reminds us that even in our darkest moments, art can be a lighthouse. When he was released in 1962, he changed his name to David Clayton Thomas, a decisive act to leave his troubled past behind, and began honing his craft on Toronto's Yonge Street, mentored by the great rockabilly legend Ronnie Hawkins. The transition from a street kid to an international icon happened almost like magic in the late 60s. When David joined Blood, Sweat, and Tears, it was an electrical connection. Their 1968 self-titled album didn't just top the charts. It sold 10 million copies worldwide and famously beat out the Beatles' Abbey Road for the Grammy for Album of the Year. Through hits like Spinning Wheel and When I Die and You've Made Me So Very Happy, David's voice became a steady warmth for a generation. He led the band through historic performances at Woodstock and even became a pawn in Cold War diplomacy during a controversial tour of the Iron Curtain. He once reflected that he was just a blues player at heart, saying, "Give me 3 chords and I've got a song." It is a poignant reminder that the most complex success often grows from the simplest passions. In his later years, David returned to his roots in Toronto. He wasn't just a legend living on past glories. He was a vibrant advocate for the next generation. He became a devoted champion of Peace Builders Canada, using his own history with the justice system to mentor youth who were facing the same barriers he once knew. He believed with every fiber of his being that nobody is born bad and that everyone deserves a chance to start over. His daughter Ashley recently shared a beautiful, simple detail of their final conversation on Father's Day. They laughed about politics and they talked about the World Cup. It's a gentle reminder to all of us to appreciate those around us right now, to cherish those simple everyday chats, because they are the threads that weave our lives together. David Clayton Thomas leaves behind a legacy of unforgettable soul and the enduring proof that a life can be rebuilt with enough will and a little music. He was a giant of the industry, a big light whose absence makes the world feel just a little dimmer. While we feel the weight of this loss, we choose to focus on gratitude for the voice that preached love and the heart that never stopped fighting for justice. His legacy continues to live on in every frame and in every soulful note of a spinning wheel that never truly stops. Tributes to David Clayton Thomas. You know, every so often a story comes along that reminds us why we fell in love with music in the first place. Bo Williams was more than just a singer. He was a steady warmth in a changing world, a man whose multi-octave voice could bridge the gap between a crowded R and B dance floor and the quiet sacred pews of a Houston church. Those who knew him in those early days in Texas often remember a young boy who won his first talent competition at just 10 years old, a child of a pastor and a choir director who seemed to carry the very spirit of soul in his lungs. He didn't just sing notes, he shared a grounded presence that made everyone in the room feel seen. It is a poignant reminder that the greatest gifts often start in the simplest of places, fueled by the love of a family that sang together every Sunday. Those who worked alongside him during his rise in Los Angeles often remembered the sheer, unforgettable power of his performance on Star Search in 1984. He was booked by his management with a simple yet daunting task: outsing the reigning 13-week champion, Sam Harris. Behind the cameras was a real person who took the stage with a humble confidence, performing a song for you and capturing the hearts of a national audience in a single boom of vocal brilliance. His journey to that stage wasn't without its hurdles, like the time he auditioned for the lead in The Temptations, but was told he was just a few inches too short for their height requirement. But Bo didn't wallow in the no. He kept moving forward, guided by the mentorship of George Benson and a vibrant spirit that eventually led him to 4 acclaimed albums with Capitol Records. Sometimes a story comes up that reminds us that our perceived shortcomings are often just detours leading us toward a much more wonderful destiny. Those who sat in the front row of his ministry often remember how the atmosphere changed when he began to sing Wonderful. After years of international acclaim in the R&B world, Bo made the courageous choice to return to his gospel roots in 1989, signing with Light Records and releasing an album that would stay in the top 10 for 58 consecutive weeks. It wasn't about the charts for him. It was about the unforgettable message of redemption and the way a song like Walk Around Heaven could provide comfort to a grieving soul. He wasn't just a performer on a stage, he was a man of deep empathy who served as a national anthem singer for the Los Angeles Lakers and the Dallas Cowboys, standing tall on the field to unite us all in song. You know, it's a beautiful thing when a person uses their platform to point towards something greater than themselves. He showed us that while fame is fleeting, the impact of a life lived in service to others is truly timeless. Those who worked alongside him on the governor's council remember a man who was as passionate about the earth as he was about the heavens. Beyond the bright lights of the recording studio, Bo Williams held a grounded presence as a member of the Seagrass Restoration Technology Development Initiative Technical Advisory Council. He understood that the beauty of our world requires protection, lending his wisdom to help restore the ecosystems of his beloved Florida and Texas. This human-centered detail, his love for conservation, reveals that the steady warmth of a man who looked at a seagrass bed with the same reverence he had for a choir. He reminded us that we are all stewards of this planet, and that appreciation for the natural world is another form of worship. It's a gentle call for us to appreciate the beauty around us right now, from the smallest blade of grass to the vast open sea. Behind the cameras was a devoted husband who spent over 50 years building a life with his wife, Elvina. They weren't just partners in life, they were partners in ministry and music, with Elvina managing his career and standing by him through the hardest of battles, including a heart attack in 2014 and the devastating floods of Hurricane Harvey. Bo often credited his family for keeping him grounded, seeing their survival through rising waters as a testament to divine protection and unforgettable faith. He leaves behind a legacy of love that reached far beyond the microphone, touching his 4 children and the countless lives he aided during times of crisis. His life was a reminder that love can help us get through the hardest battles, and that a vibrant life is measured by the people we help along the way. We should all take a moment today to hold our loved ones a little closer, just as Bo held his family through every storm. Bo Williams passed away on June 17, 2026 at the age of 76, but he leaves us with a heart full of wonderful melodies and a spirit that refused to be dimmed by cancer. We're not going to dwell on the painful details of his battle. Instead, we celebrate the man who chose to sing gospel when he could have made millions elsewhere, simply because his heart belonged to the message. He was a vibrant soul who moved from the stage to the pulpit, always keeping that multi-octave voice tuned to the frequency of hope. His legacy continues to live on in every frame of his performances and in every life he touched with his ministry. As we say goodbye to this soul and gospel legend, let us carry a piece of his steady warmth with us, remembering that even when the music fades, the love remains. Tributes to Bo Williams. One, the passing of a legend. You know, every so often a story comes along that reminds us just how much one person can shape the world we experience every single day. On June 22nd, 2024, the music industry lost its most vibrant and steady warmth when Clive Davis passed away at his home in Manhattan at the age of 94. He was a man often described as having supernatural talent-spotting abilities, a figure who didn't just sign artists but nurtured their souls. Those who worked alongside him often remembered that for Clive, it was never just about the business. Barry Manilow once shared that they worked, argued, and celebrated together for 50 years, noting with a grounded presence that to Clive, it was always about family. Behind the titan of industry was a man who truly listened. He leaves behind a legacy of unforgettable melodies that have become the very soundtrack of our lives. 2. A young man from Crown Heights. Behind the cameras and the brightly accessorized suits was a real person who understood the weight of loss and the value of a hard-earned dream. Born in Brooklyn's Crown Heights, Clive was named after the suave movie star Clive Brook, a name he joked was quite rare in his neighborhood. His childhood was defined by a middle-class upbringing and a deep love for the Brooklyn Dodgers, but tragedy struck early when he lost both of his parents within just 11 months of each other while he was still in college. He often reflected that this devastating blow made him feel that anything cherished could be taken away at any time. It was this realization that fueled his unending work ethic. He didn't start with a passion for music. He was a garden variety striver who used scholarships to find his way through New York University and Harvard Law. You know, sometimes a story comes up that reminds us how a single lucky break like a law firm assignment can lead someone to their true calling. 3. The creative turning point at Monterey. In 1967, Clive attended the Monterey Pop Festival, an event he would later call the creative turning point of his life. It was there, sitting on the grass, that he was dazzled by a young singer named Janis Joplin. Despite having no formal musical background, he discovered a natural gift for hearing potential that others missed. He went on to propel Columbia Records into the rock era, signing legends like Santana, Bruce Springsteen, and Aerosmith. Bruce Springsteen later recalled being signed at just 22 years old, noting that Clive treated him with the same respect and kindness as a nobody that he did after he became a global superstar. This ability to see the human being behind the talent was Clive's true signature. It's a gentle reminder for us all to appreciate the potential in those around us today before they've even realized it themselves. 4. A bond beyond music. Whitney Houston. Perhaps no story illustrates Clive's heart better than his decades-long bond with Whitney Houston. He first saw her in 1983 at a small New York club called Sweetwater, where the 19-year-old was singing backup for her mother. When she stepped forward to sing The Greatest Love of All, Clive knew he had found a voice for a generation. He didn't just sign her, he spent 2 years carefully searching for the perfect songs to launch her career. He treated Whitney like a daughter, famously writing her a letter promising to stand by her until you find peace during her hardest battles. Those who saw them together often remember a relationship built on unwavering loyalty. Even in the face of unspeakable tragedy, Clive's focus was always on honoring her regal presence and musical genius. It is a poignant reminder that love and mentorship can help us navigate even the most difficult storms. 5. The strength of resilience. Clive's life was not without its shadows, but he was the ultimate example of a friendly provocateur who knew how to reinvent himself. In 1973, he faced a painful and public dismissal from Columbia Records, a setback that could have ended a lesser career. Yet he used that adversity to found Arista Records, proving his golden ears were no fluke by immediately finding a #1 hit in Barry Manilow's Mandy. He later defined resilience as the ability to come back from adversity, a theme he found beautiful in songs like I Will Survive. He didn't just survive, he thrived, launching the careers of Alicia Keys and Jennifer Hudson well into his 70s and 80s. He taught us that openness in all areas of life is the key to happiness, a philosophy he lived by when he shared his own personal truth about his bisexuality at the age of 80. 6. A legacy that lives on. As we look back on 94 years of a life beautifully lived, we see a man whose passion for music was matched only by his passion for helping his fellow man. From his tireless efforts in the battle against AIDS to his $10 million gift to create the Clive Davis Institute at NYU, he ensured that the next generation would always have a place to find their voice. He was a living landmark who never lost his childlike enthusiasm for a great melody. Clive Davis leaves behind a world that sounds a little sweeter, a little bolder, and a lot more soulful because he was in it. His legacy continues to live on in every frame of the films he produced and in every note of the songs he helped bring to the world. We're not going to dwell on the loss today, but rather celebrate the gift of a man who showed us that with enough hard work and a little bit of magic, anyone can find their own 3.5 minutes of magic. Tributes to Clive Davis. You know, every so often a story comes along that reminds us how a single vibrant spark of an idea can change the world forever. Walter Parazaider was that spark for the legendary band Chicago. Those who worked alongside him often remembered that the entire concept of a rock band with horns was quite simply Walt's idea. He didn't just play the music, he breathed life into a dream that started in the steady warmth of his parents' basement in Illinois. Behind the cameras and the bright stage lights was a man of grounded presence who sought to make the brass section a lead voice once again. It was a bold, unforgettable ambition. He brought together his friends from DePaul University, including Terry Kath and Danny Seraphine, to form a group that would eventually sell over 100 million records. It's a reminder that great things often begin with a small circle of friends and a shared honest passion. Those who knew him best often speak of his vibrant versatility, whether he was holding a saxophone, a flute, or a clarinet. Walter's contributions were the very architecture of the Chicago sound. We all remember that unforgettable flute solo on Color My World, a song that became a cherished staple for slow dances and lifelong memories. But beyond the professional accolades and his 2016 induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Walter was a man who valued deep, lasting connections. He married his wife Jacqueline in 1966, and they shared a remarkable 59 wonderful years together. His daughter Felicia touched the hearts of many when she shared, "I love you, Papi. You colored our world." It is a poignant reflection on how a person's true greatness is often measured by the love they leave behind in their own home. We're not going to dwell on the painful details of his final years, but it's important to honor the steady warmth and strength Walter showed after his 2021 Alzheimer's diagnosis. He faced his battle with the same spirit he brought to the stage, stating at the time that he was working hard and not going to give up. Walter passed away peacefully in hospice care on June 17, 2026, at the age of 81. His life serves as a beautiful reminder to appreciate those around us right now, to listen a little more closely to the melodies of our own lives. Walter Parazaider leaves behind a legacy of unforgettable innovation and a reminder that love can help us get through even the hardest battles. His music remains woven into the very fabric of American song, a gift that will continue to comfort us for generations. His legacy continues to live on in every frame and every note. Tributes to Walter Parazaider. Today we gather to celebrate a man of steady warmth and grounded presence. Abdullah Ibrahim, the legendary South African jazz pianist once known as Dollar Brand, has left us at the age of 91. He passed away peacefully in Germany, surrounded by the family that meant so much to him. Those who worked alongside him often remember that he didn't just play the piano. He radiated a certain majesty that inspired awe even in his later, more frail years. President Nelson Mandela once famously called him our Mozart, a title that speaks to the profound elegance he brought to a world often filled with discord. Behind the cameras and the grand concert halls was a man who died as his partner, Dr. Marina Umari, so beautifully put it, with South Africa and its people in his heart. To understand the music, we have to look back at the young boy born Adolf Johannes Bryan in 1934 in the vibrant multicultural melting pot of Cape Town. His early musical memories weren't of fame, but of the unforgettable Christian hymns and gospel tunes he heard from his grandmother, the church pianist, and his mother, who led the choir. He began piano lessons at 7, and by 15 he was already making his professional debut. He attended Trafalgar High School, the first school in Cape Town built for colored and black students, a place that itself became a vibrant symbol of resistance against apartheid. It was during these formative years that he developed a musical vocabulary that was inimitably his own, blending township jive, Cape Malay music, and classical bop into a sound that felt both ancient and brand new. In 1959, Abdullah formed the Jazz Epistles, the first black group to record a modern jazz album in South Africa. But as the shadows of apartheid grew longer, he and his wife-to-be, the singer Sathma Bea Benjamin, were forced into exile. It was in a small club in Zurich that a chance meeting with Duke Ellington changed everything. Ellington became a patron, introducing the world to the vibrant African voice of the Dollar Brand Trio. But perhaps his greatest contribution was a 17-minute improvisation recorded during a brief return home in 1974, a piece called Mannenberg. You know, sometimes a story comes up that reminds us how art can be a hammer to shape reality. Mannenberg became the unofficial national anthem of the anti-apartheid movement. It didn't preach, it created a feeling. It sounded like freedom, even before freedom arrived. Behind the legend was a real person who was constantly searching. In 1968, he converted to Islam and took the name Abdullah Ibrahim, a turning point in his lifelong quest for spiritual harmony. He wasn't always an easy man. He could be suspicious, abrupt, and cryptic. A journalist once recalled that the first time they met, Abdullah simply growled at him, but this was just a man who refused to be simplified into a monument. He found peace in the discipline of martial arts, where he earned a black belt, and in the quiet meditations of Zen philosophy. He had a simple human side too. He loved the spiritual tradition of Mahalia Jackson, and would often send text messages simply saying, "Come Sunday." He believed his true name was Senzo, a name from his father's Mosotho heritage that his grandmother had hidden to give him an easier passage through a divided world. In 1990, when Nelson Mandela was finally freed, he personally invited Abdullah to come home. He memorably performed at Mandela's inauguration in 1994, a poignant moment where the music of exile finally met the music of home. In his final years, he spent his time between Cape Town and New York, focusing on the M7 Academy to educate the next generation of young minds and bodies. He once said, "Some do it because they have to. We do it because we want to, so we do not require much sleep." His final South African performance was just this past March, where he played with the same artistry and grace that defined his entire 7-decade career. As we say goodbye to the maestro, let his life be a reminder to appreciate those around us right now. His story reminds us that love and art can help us get through the hardest battles. He leaves behind a legacy of unforgettable melodies and a spirit that could never be caged. His legacy continues to live on in every frame and in every note he played. Tributes to Abdullah Ibrahim. The world feels a little quieter today as we reflect on the passing of Oliver Tree Nickel, a truly unforgettable artist who left us far too soon at the age of 32. While the public knew him for his eccentric bowl haircut and his larger-than-life internet personality, those who worked alongside him often remembered a man of steady warmth and deep sincerity. His dear friend Ethan Klein shared a sentiment that many are feeling right now. He said Oliver was such a unique soul, a radiant light that shined upon so many of us. The world is darker for his absence. Behind the cameras and the colorful costumes was a real person who cared deeply for his craft and his family, a reminder for all of us to appreciate the vibrant spirits in our own lives while they are still here to make us smile. Born and raised in the coastal beauty of Santa Cruz, California, Oliver's journey began with a grounded presence that never quite left him, even as he reached the heights of international fame. He was a proud graduate of Harbor High School, a local boy who possessed a genius spark that allowed him to master music, comedy, and film with a seemingly effortless grace. We remember the joy he brought when he broke the Guinness World Record for the largest kick scooter on Earth. It wasn't just a stunt, but a fulfillment of a lifelong dream that invited us all to play along. He was a man who loved life, and that love was evident in every thoughtful, introspective note he played for his millions of listeners. As Oliver traveled through Brazil for his ambitious world's first world tour, he was doing exactly what he loved, unifying the world through the universal language of art. But perhaps his most inspiring story is found in his final wishes. He had recently established a foundation called Dr. Oliver Tree's Art Grants for Baby Geniuses. Oliver decided that his success should belong to the next generation of creators. He once remarked that when he passed, he wanted his legacy to go back to the artists who were just starting their own journeys. It is a poignant thought that even in his absence, his unforgettable spirit will continue to provide a helping hand to young dreamers everywhere. Oliver's music, including hits like Life Goes On and Miss You, has found a new, deeper meaning in the hearts of those who continue to press play in his honor. His former partner, Melanie Martinez, perhaps said it best when she reflected on the laughter he sparked. She wrote, "I know you're making the angels giggle. I'll be here wondering what creative product you're scheming up in heaven." You know, sometimes a story comes up that reminds us that love can help us get through the hardest battles, and Oliver's life was a testament to that truth. He leaves behind a legacy of pure creativity, kindness, and a vision that refused to stand still. His legacy continues to live on in every frame, every lyric, and every life he touched with his unforgettable light. Tributes to Oliver Tree.